Good evening, everybody, and I say hello from Jalapa, here in Mexico. I'm going to share with you the information related to the affective methods type of coding. There are 4 types of coding: the emotion coding, the value, the versus coding, and the evaluation coding. The first 2 are highly related, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. In page 86, you'll find the information about emotion coding. What is important in the description about this type of coding is basically that emotion coding is labeling some information related to emotions that either the participant recall or experience, or we can also label emotions by using the some inference as a researcher. So there are two ways that we can find some information about emotions. In terms of the applications, because emotions are universal, this type of coding is very appropriate for all type of qualitative studies. It is very important and help us to explore interpersonal or intrapersonal experiences and actions of the participant. It is important to acknowledge and take in consideration this type of coding, because in every research, this information gives us or provide us deep insight into the participant's perspective. Something very important to consider is that in every situation, we have a relationship between emotion and actions. They cannot be separated. Another important information is that the researchers need to use all their abilities in terms of defining this type of coding. And the researcher can do it by 3 ways. One is by reading nonverbal clues. So they have to use all those abilities. They have to use the abilities to infer about the underlying effect of any of the emotions from the participants, as well as sympathize and empathize with the participants to be able to relate and make the participant comfortable in sharing their information or feelings, anything that has to do with emotions. Emotions, something that is very important, there is a vast amount of work that can give us ideas about emotions. So we really need to be very careful, and if you look in page 86 and 87, you get more information about the importance of how do we select the right words that help us to code emotions. Another important thing is that because we sometimes deal with different languages, we need to take in consideration how those words and that express emotion are used in different languages. In the case of English, for instance, all based on the context, the words can have different meaning. Another aspect that they mention in this type of emotion coding is that some of them can be simple, like the data that's similar in content and context. For instance, the books give us an example in page 86 about this gay man in his 30s that shares his experiences. And sometimes, we can have some research just based on gay man giving us the same type of information. But sometimes we have other complex research that we need to take in consideration more aspects, like for instance, in the treat for cancer, can be more complex, or the highly contextual. For instance, in a divorce, there are many circumstances that influence the experiences, or perhaps something can be length in time. For instance, us as graduate students, our emotions change over time. Another aspect in page 87, very important, is that after we first code our emotions, depending of the situation or specific characteristics or experiences, we need to subcode and categorize the emotions. One other important thing, we need to understand that emotion can be preceded by other emotions or by other aspects or other circumstances that has to do with values. We'll look into value emotions coding in a minute, which imply that we can go farther into our subcoding and categorizing. The other important aspect about emotion is to take in consideration that sometimes a single experience can provide with data of different type of emotions, or sometimes emotions that are conflicting. So when we code, we have to be very careful about how they are related. When we find different kind of emotion, and we will see this very much used with all this type of coding in affective methods, is that we use a concurrent method, which looks at or uses simultaneous type of coding. Emotion coding versus coding, different type of codings, which really had to relate also as well with the different values, attitudes, and beliefs or people. Something that the books in page 88 indicates that later, because we don't know that yet, there is a system, C8QDAS, which I don't know what it is, but once we learn, this will enable us to use and figure out how we follow this trail of data. Now we're going to go to the value coding. The value coding, as I mentioned before, has a great relationship with emotion coding, because the emotions are depending on the values of the participants. And the values can be based on the importance of something that value, the attitude, how do we feel or think about something, or the beliefs of the participants, which is more related to the attributes and personal experiences. Once again, the researchers can either look at what the information the participant give them directly about this construct, or the researcher can represent, the perspective of the worldview of the participants. Something that this type of studies, once again, are very good for any qualitative study. It's very important to take them in consideration, because it's related to the something very intrapersonal of the participant, and it's always related between values, beliefs, and attitude. These three constructs interplay and influence each other. When we code, we use B for value, B for belief, and A for attitude, and all of these are manifested or reflect through feelings, thoughts, or actions. And as mentioned to you, when we code, first we have to code the units by values, attributes, or beliefs, and you can look in page 90 or 91. And there are some samples if you look at your book here in page 90, it's an example how we can code and use these different units. It is very important that when we do this analytic reflection, this is the third part, is trying to define or summarize all these values, and through important phrases or this one of the things that they emphasize in page 92 in the second paragraph is that there are some phrases that alert the researcher about this type of values. The participant not always give us exact words that represent the values or this type of construct. So the researcher has to use their ability to figure out some phrases that give us this information. Sometimes, the researcher can infer, or sometimes the researcher need to ask direct questions. The values, we need to consider as a researcher that all values are influenced by the social context and networks and as well as the biography and the history of the participant, the time where they are. They suggest that we do a lot of analytic memos, that we take notes and these memos during our research to try to explore more in the meaning of all these values. And they mentioned that sometimes questionnaire and surveys are good instruments, but they don't give us all the information. Now, the versus coding, this basically what they relate is to indicate that many times there are conflicts between two entities or two groups, the individuals or the power. They struggle for power, and they call it the moieties. And critical studies look at use this type of coding. For instance, they look into teachers versus administrators, or Republicans versus Democrats. So this they really look at to the conflicts and the powers. They suggest that researchers need to look for patterns. Sometimes researchers can take side on the issues or their personal perspective, which can influence in some degree also the research. They always are coded as binaries because we are looking at two different types of structures. We categorize all the codes, and then we need to go further into emerging categories or a second cycle of coding that we look into the more abstract elements. Always looking for that contradiction, and also for the what are the opposite juxtaposition. And the last one is the evaluation coding, which really focus or analyze data from a judging point of view about the merit or the worth of programs and policies. And this type of coding really is very useful, like describing, comparing, or predicting different patterns and observation, or exploring measure standards, or providing recommendation. This type of coding is appropriate for policy, critical, and action organized, and for evaluating studies. Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of the class. I'll see you next Tuesday. Bye.